Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you're looking to get more sales, more customers, master your marketing, and ultimately take control of your retail or e-commerce business, then you're in the right place. I'm Selena Knight, a retail growth strategist and multi-award-winning store owner whose superpower is uncovering exactly what your business requires to move to the next level. I'll provide you with the strategies, the tools, and the insight you need to scale your store. All you need to do is take action. Ready to get started? Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Now, the funny thing is, retail is all about selling, whether you've got a retail store or an e-commerce store. The simple fact is people are coming to you to buy stuff. But the number one thing that our retail and e-commerce store owners tell us is that they hate selling. So what if we take the whole sales concept off the table and kind of reframed it as giving customers choices and giving them the ability to make decisions really quickly about what it is they actually want. Want to know how to do it? Well, today's guest, Bob Marsh, is going to tell us exactly how to do that. Hey there, Bob. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Selena. Great. Thank you. Thanks for great to be here. Thanks for having me. I loved your opening. It's I'm fired up for this conversation.
You'll have to bear with my croaky, I've got kind of Phoebe from Friends voice, when she had the cold. Was that the Smelly Cat episode? I don't know. Friends made a whole big resurgence.
That's pretty funny. Maybe so. Well, you sound great to me. Sometimes it sounds different in our own heads, but you sound great.
Now, sales. Why does everybody hate sales?
It's funny. You were talking on some about this in the opening, and then to that question. I if I could wave a magic wand over the world of business, and because I've been asked this before, if you could wave, what would you change? And I would say the whole perception of sales. And the reason for that is because there's just this kind of this, and it goes back, and it's honestly probably well-deserved in some cases, where people just have this aversion to salespeople because they're worried that they're going to manipulate them, or they're worried they're just going to, not let them go. They're going to keep talking to them when they don't want to be talked to. They're just going to try to twist them into something. They're going to nag them and never give up.
Yeah, get ripped off.
And it's a shame. And you know what? Some sellers probably deserve that perception, and they make it worse. But for the ones that are good, they don't make it feel that way. And I know I always felt that way about myself. And it always was so frustrating. It's frustrating the amount of time and effort it took just to get over the perception and help someone realize, like, hey, you can trust me. I'm just here to help you. So I think the world would be a lot easier, and we could help people a lot more if we just had that. We could wave that magic wand and get rid of that perception.
So you said you've been in this industry for a while. What made you get into this whole sales, customers, like delving into this world? Most people don't decide they're going to be a salesperson. Mm-hmm. So how did you, and you've kind of even evolved after that, but how did you get into this whole sales realm?
When I was a kid, whenever you'd have these sales, like where you'd have to go sell for Easter or around the holidays or something like that,
yeah,
I always looked forward to that. And I remember, I liked going and knocking on the door of my neighbors and, asking them if they wanted some candy, and also like to try to win the little competition. So I felt like, and I remember my parents used to say this, and others were like, geez, this kid seems kind of wired for sales. And I always kind of found that interesting. But really, my very first job in sales was in a retail store, and I was selling golf equipment. And I remember, and I'll tell you a little story about it, which kind of answers your question. So, first, as background, I was a golfer growing up. I played competitively in high school, in college, and I wasn't great or anything, but I loved the game. And so working in a retail store selling golf equipment, I'm in my element, right? Like, I know the game. I loved reading about it. I knew the new technology. I loved talking with my peers about it. Customers come in, we could talk about golf, how great. And one day I remember there was another salesperson in the store that came up to me, and she said, she said, I'm kind of new. I've been here for a little while and I'm struggling. And like, you're a top salesperson in the store. Like, can you tell me like how you do it? And I remember being so surprised because at first I'm like, I'm the top salesperson. I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of how I was doing because I was just focusing on the job. But the thing that really struck out to me, and I remember this feeling even today, is that comment almost made me feel like icky, like, oh, I'm the top salesperson, because all I felt like I was doing was helping people. Someone would walk into the store and first I had to learn, like, how do I overcome the resistance, and just be like, hey, I'm here available. I learn how do I strike up a conversation to be more human? Like, hey, out for a walk tonight, or been playing much golf lately? Like, just try to disarm them and make them know, like, you can trust me. I'm not just going to try to sell you something every minute.
But you were just doing that really innately. You didn't have like a script that was like, welcome the customer when they came in. You were just having a conversation.
Just having a conversation, just like, how's your night going? And try to I would actually go out of my way not to ask a sales question, like, can I help you? Because I remember, and maybe I will walk into a retail store often and someone will come up to me and say, can I help you? Yeah. And my natural response is, nope.
I just walked in the door. I don't even know what I want. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would, sometimes I do that even today. And then like 2 seconds later, I'm like, why did I say no? I actually do need help. So it's this kind of, I just learned, have a natural conversation with somebody and what I would do is I would do that because I would let them pull me into the sales conversation once they decided, like, okay, I can trust this person. And then it's just like, I would learn about their game and tell them about the new technology. And while the most expensive stuff isn't necessarily the best and the least expensive isn't the worst, it's all about you and your game. So I just would, work with them to figure out what was right. And, it turned out that approach of just genuinely trying to help people helped me sell a whole lot of golf equipment. So it made me realize, like, geez, maybe this world of sales is something that's up my alley.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I really struggle with the concept of, retail and e-commerce is about selling. Like, someone is coming to you to buy whatever it is that you sell. If someone walks into your store, there's the chance that they want to buy something. And I always use this analogy, which is, I'm never going to walk into a guitar shop. I don't play guitar. I don't have any interest in guitar. If I walked in there, I'm probably going to buy something. And so, yes, even when people are browsing, they're not going to come into a shop where they're like, oh, there's nothing there that I would buy. Like, it just doesn't, that's not the way that we're wired. And so I've always taken the same approach as you, which is, if I can just help you make a decision, then, it's a win-win. And actually, if you don't allow a customer to make a decision and they walk away empty-handed, like you were saying, sometimes you walk in and you're like, why did I say I didn't need help when I do? You're actually doing them a disservice if you don't sell to them and help them make a choice, because then they walk away and whatever they came in for hasn't been solved.
I love your comment about helping people make decisions, because really, I feel like that is the role, whether it's a salesperson or an e-commerce site or a store, is you're not trying to make somebody buy something. No. You're trying to help them figure out what they actually need. And so you think about, that's kind of where, what I often talk and write about is, what are the barriers, the mental barriers that customers have, and sometimes we have ourselves, that get in the way of helping people make decisions. So you think about,
can we talk about those?
Yeah, sure. So, well, first of all, you think about, like, what you said is, so you walk into a store, like, you're obviously there because you want something, maybe not right now, but you're clearly interested. So you're in the funnel, right? Yeah. So you're interested in something. So if we can just help you kind of voice what you want, trust that you can say what you want or not want, and we can kind of help you realize, like, this isn't for you or it is for you. So, So you asked, like, what are some of the barriers? Well, one of the things is, I'd say is understanding this natural aversion that people have for salespeople. So if you just accept that, it doesn't mean we have to like it. But if you realize that and put yourself in the shoes of the customer, then you realize, like, the way to approach them is not, can I help you today? What are you looking for? Now you're instantly jumping to, I don't care about you. I'm trying to sell you something or get you to buy something because that's my job. Where taking a genuine interest in somebody, and like I said, I would go out of my way not to ask a sales question, just to say like, oh, this is a human being. I can trust them. I can have a natural conversation. And they pull you into the conversation. So that's the first one. The second one is, a lot of times people like making decisions, but sometimes they struggle with it.
Yeah. Well, we like making decisions because we're hardwired. Like we get, is it the dopamine or the serotonin? I always get them wrong.
Yeah.
You get let's just call it dopamine. Don't write in and tell me if I've got it wrong.
Sure.
You get that hit after, it's like I've checked something off the list. I've achieved something. Mm-hmm. And just making those small decisions does that exact same thing in our brain.
Yeah, for sure it does. And so the whole thing with, you mentioned in the opening, I know what we talk about is this whole thing about options. Like that is one of the biggest things. So imagine you walk into a store or you go to an e-commerce site and you're just buried with options. Like so many different things. Like, oh my God, like I either know exactly what I want and I go get it, or I'm like, I don't even know where to start. And the next thing you know, I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And then, then you kind of start facing the information overload issue. And then you're like, I'm going to not buy this now. Not because I didn't want to, not because I wasn't ready, not because I don't want to spend the money. I'm just too overwhelmed.
Can I jump in here with a really good analogy?
Yes.
It's like going to the Cheesecake Factory and the menu has 32 pages, and you look at it and you look at it and you order the same thing every time.
Every time. Right. Yeah. So, you think about and that's why, the whole idea of like design of websites and e-commerce sites. And then you think of a store, like the importance of merchandising, like this helps guide people through, making decisions. So, that's like kind of the one side of it. You bury people with too much information and they just get lost. And, there's been, I think we talked about it a week ago, that research on the purchase of jam in a grocery store.
Oh, I don't know that we did. I want to hear about the purchase of jam in a grocery store.
Yeah. So this is this was fascinating to me. So this was trying to understand people's willingness and comfort making a decision based on the options presented to them. So this is the way the study works. So they used a grocery store, something everybody goes to, and they created a giant display of jam. And so in stage number one, they had people walk in and saw this massive display, 24 different types of jam. So you're thinking like the thought was like, there's every option, any flavor anybody would ever want. Like, isn't this amazing? We've got everything available. Well, what happened was a lot of people would stop and gawk and stop and look at all this jam. So the numbers were 60% of the people would stop and look at the display, but only 3% of them would actually buy anything.
And I wonder if they all bought strawberry.
They bought nothing. Oh, yeah, the 3%. The
3%.
Right? Yeah, right. So, and you realize like it's just there's so much. It's okay. So, but that's where kind of the proof is. So the next phase of the study, they set another display with only 6 jars of jam. Same flavors are in there, not all 24, but 6. So much less impressive. So not as many people stopped to take a look at it. So in this case, I think it was 40% of the people stopped to look. So a little bit less, nothing crazy. But 30% of those who stopped and looked bought a jar of jam, 10 times as many. Wow. And you realize, so again, no difference in flavors, same jam, same price, same options, not as many, but same things that were flavors that were still in there, 10 times more purchase made. And so you realize what happened was it's called the paradox of choice. What is the right balance of number of options to kind of give somebody? But the reality is, and we all know this, and I think it's probably even worse today because we're so inundated with information overload. Too many options will just plummet decision making. But here's the other thing: different study. A single option is probably the worst thing that you can do.
Yes,
it's called
maybe I don't want that
aversion.
Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want something better.
Yeah.
Maybe I want something cheaper.
Right. You get one option, and it's the single option aversion. 97% of the time, someone will wait. It doesn't mean they won't buy it eventually, but you do all those mental gymnastics in your head. Is that really what I want? That's more expensive than I thought it was going to be. I don't know. Maybe let me just think about it a little bit. Is this person right? Are they just trying to manipulate me? Is this really on sale? Like, all those different things that are just so silly.
And everyone who has a bricks and mortar retail store will know the last one of something never sells. Never. Because when there is only one on the shelf,
Who
No
wants
one
that?
wants to buy it.
Yeah. It takes the perfect buyer, but that is going to be rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got two barriers so far. One is that kind of, in your face, can I help you? The second one is we call it too much choice.
Too much. Yeah. Too much.
Too much or too little.
There's really the balance of options. Too much versus too little, like figuring out the right number of options.
Mm-hmm. What else have we got?
Yeah. Okay. Third one, and I love this because I think there's so many different ways to kind of bring this in. And that, we talked a little bit about like kind of trust and the whole thing. So the other one is expertise. Like really helping the customer realize that you are an expert and you know what you're doing. And so I'll tell you a story that kind of relates to this. Have you heard of Roadrunner Sports?
No, I've heard of Roadrunner, but not Roadrunner Sports.
Yeah, that's how I remember it because I love Roadrunner. So Roadrunner Sports has been around for 40 years. They've sold 40 million pairs of running and walking shoes, the largest walking and running shoe store in the world.
Wow.
So they're in select areas. Not everyone has really heard of it. So I had, and so what they've done is they've taken this surprisingly complex process of picking out the right running shoes or walking shoes because there's so many options, and figure out a way to simplify that and speed up decision making in a very persuasive way. So I learned about this store because I went through their experience. So many years ago, I walked into I'd moved from Michigan out to Northern California, so beautiful weather. Thought, I'll take up running. So I walk into a Roadrunner Sports in Walnut Creek, California. So I walk in the store and I walk in and I see this giant display of like 80 different pairs of running shoes. I'm thinking, I thought I just walked into a running shoe store. That looks like any other shoe store that how is this possible? So I'm looking, I'm like, I don't even know where to start. There's inexpensive ones, expensive ones, to all kinds of stuff. So a gentleman walks up to me and he says, "Hey, you look a little overwhelmed. Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I just, I'm new to running. I just need a pair of running shoes. And where do I even start?" He said, "Okay, well, let's talk about it and figure out what's right for you." Well, I love that.
I like this guy already.
I know, right? So he's like, let's talk about it and figure out what's right for you. We're like, this is something we're going to go through together, not, the obvious ones like, well, what brand do you like?
Yeah.
Or how much do you want to spend? But I'd be like, well, what does that have to do with it? Okay. So he said, all right, well, tell me a little bit more about you. So you said you're new to running. So am I safe to say like, you probably don't want to spend a lot of money? And I said, yeah, that's right. But I also don't want to go cheap. Like I want to get what's right. Okay, great. So now I'm revealing my budget, but he didn't it wasn't like, what's your budget, kind of thing. So then he said, okay, well, tell me, do you plan on running inside or outside? And I thought to myself, oh, that's interesting. I guess I could see how that could have something to do with the shoe. I said, well, definitely outside. I just moved here from Michigan. Okay. He said, great. So do you plan on running in the street, on a track, on a trail? And I thought, well, this is really getting interesting. Like
that's
I never thought
questions.
about that. But it makes sense to me why that would matter. It could affect the tread of the shoe. I said, oh, well, I live down the street in an apartment. I'm just going to walk out. I'll run in the street. And I thought, actually a trail sounds cool. Maybe I'll do that, which I never did, by the way. So I said, okay, now let's go outside. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really fascinating. So we go outside and then he said, okay, I want you to take a light jog over to that flagpole and then come on back. So I did. And I came back and he said, okay, so what I was looking at was how your foot strikes the ground. Does it land on the outside and roll in, inside and roll out? Is it more neutral? It's called supination and pronation. And different shoes are better for different runners. It's not good or bad. It's just everybody's different. Okay. So he said, okay, do that again, but from the side. And he watched me again. So he said, again, I'm looking at, does your foot strike the ground on your heel, your toe, more neutral? Again, different shoes better for different types of runners. And hey, by the way, try to get your shoulders back a little bit more and shorten your stride a little bit. It has nothing, it'll make you a more efficient runner. So I'm thinking like, wow, like he's establishing himself as an expert, had nothing to do with the shoe. He's just being helpful.
Now you're like, I'm just going to buy, like, if you can't sell me something, I'm going to go away really disappointed. If you tell me that you did not buy any shoes, I'm going to be very disappointed
think of this
for you.
Process, like he's engaging me. I trust him. He's helping me out. He's giving me tips. Like, now that don't even have to do with him trying to sell me something. Like this person genuinely, this is what they do.
Yeah.
So we go back in the store and he said, okay, here's the 3 shoes that are right for you. So check them out, try them out, see what you think. 3. Yeah, everyone loves 3. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
So, but the point is like, what I loved about this is, so he kind of walked me through this experience together. It was clear he had like a method to go through, but it felt natural. He was helping me out. He shared tips and established as an expert, but at the end, relinquished all the control back to me. And that's what we want, right? As a buyer, we want to be in control. We don't want to think like I'm being manipulated or twisted or I'm just buying what he's trying to sell, which of course could have been true, by the way. But, I felt like now the decision's mine and he's not part of it anymore. He's going to help me try him on and I'm going to buy what I want to buy. So like, do you think there's any chance I'm going to go to some other store at this point?
No, even if they're charging more for it, because this is, I love you right now because we talk about this all the time, which is these are the reasons you can charge more for the same product. Is if you have this expertise, okay, you will get the showroomers who come and they take all your information and then they get onto Amazon or whatever and they try and buy it cheap. They're not your best customers. Just deal with it. But they're the people who will come back and go, I'm going back because you spent the time with me. You made me feel in control of the decision, and I'm prepared to pay for that. And like you're saying, I would be disappointed for you right now if you said they didn't have any shoes for me. I'd be like, what are they going to do?
Of course they did. Right, exactly. Yeah. And think about, and think about a place like that. They actually can charge a premium and be like, we're not going to be the cheapest. Then you're less likely to get the people that you're talking about just looking for a deal. Because like, well, then don't come here because it's going to be more expensive. But then people talk about it too. I mean, we're talking about it right now, right? Roadrunner Sports, thumbs up. Like, so that kind of goes back to the idea of using your expertise through the process to build trust and help someone make decisions for themselves and feel safe about it.
It's funny that you should talk about that because I was just thinking, how do you do this online? And the first thing that popped into my head was, well, you've got AI now. But even just you and I were talking about this example because I just bought something when we did our conversation a week ago before we came on the podcast, which was I needed a new foundation. And the one that I like is only available in America, the shade that I like. And they don't ship to Australia because they sell that same brand in Australia, but they don't bring that color in. And so I was Googling and, I fell prey to the Instagram ad that I've seen 472,000 times. It's like, I'll click the button. And they went through a really good series of questions, which is, started off with like, what's your skin type? And then when you picked, when you got down to color, it was like, okay, let's refine that color a little bit more. And there was sort of 4 swatches. And then it was like, let's refine that color a little bit more. And I even went into my daughter and I was like, which one of these do you think I am? And she reaffirmed my decision. So they kind of gamified this process because
it's a good point.
You could do this via chat, but realistically, it's much quicker if you can build something on the website that does this. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, they were offering a money back guarantee if the color didn't match. They had a ridiculous amount of upsells and downsells in the cart. Like, kudos to them. They know their average order value. They know their customer acquisition cost. Subscribe to the foundation and you get a free brush or something like that. So they built everything in and it came and it was great. And so that whole concept of, but I can't do this if I'm online kind of goes out the window in this day and age. I think just the changes we have had in e-commerce over the last 3 to 5 years, I thought about this concept 15 years ago, but the cost for someone to build it out for me was like $100,000. The cost to build something like this out now is probably less than $1,000. And,
much less, yeah.
And what about the customer experience? It doesn't have to be like you've got the expertise. It's just putting it down. It doesn't matter if you're a gift shop. It doesn't matter if you're homewares. It doesn't matter if you're fashion. Your customers have a style or they have something that they're leaning towards, even a gift. Who are you buying for? Buying for my grandson. Do they like building? Do they like drawing? Like you can, the questions you would ask in store are quite easy to ask these days online.
Yeah.
And so there's really no excuse to not be putting that into play. And as a result, being able to charge more for it.
Yes. Yeah, there's got to be there are ways to do that, and you're right. I've seen this before too, where it's an online kind of builder, or you're going through some experience or asking questions, and sometimes you'll understand like, okay, this thing isn't perfect, but like, gosh, it sure is helping me narrow things down. Like,
or it just gives you ideas.
Just gives you ideas. Like there's a toy store right close to my house that anytime I have to buy a gift for a birthday for a kid, I always go there. I know that place is expensive. But the thing is, I can walk in and say, all right, so here's the deal. I got a birthday coming up. This is for my niece. She's turning 6. These are a couple of things that she likes. Like, what should I get?
What do 6-year-olds
walking
like?
me around. Yeah. And they'll walk me around and give me some ideas. I'm like, great, let's get that. Because
do they wrap it for you?
What's that?
Do they wrap it for you?
Yes, of course. If I want. Yeah. Yeah. But those are all the things, like you said, you can charge a premium. And I walk away as I walk out of there feeling confident that I've made a good choice. Because part of what we're talking about too is that if you go through a process, and it can be different in retail versus e-commerce, but everyone loves the idea of, can we eliminate the salesperson? Can buyers just do things 100% on their own? And for some things, of course, like that makes a lot of sense. But for many purposes, and there's probably some threshold dollar amount, I don't know what it is, but the degree of buyer's remorse that exists in a non-salesperson environment is actually significantly higher. So there's a certain price point where you could say, hey, if I'm buying something that's $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, an example, if I have to make that choice on my own with no salesperson helping me, the percentage of people that feel buyer's remorse afterwards is extraordinarily high.
Do you think that's because the buck stops with them and they can't justify it?
They're just wondering, did I make the right choice?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of what we were just talking about. Like I walk out of that toy store and I'm like, did I get the right thing? Is this is it good quality? Where this person has recommended it to me, an expert helped me pick it out. I feel really confident about that. So I think that's what it's about. It's like wondering, because you question yourselves, like, I'm not an expert in toys. I'm not an expert in whatever something else might be. So the idea of having someone walk me through it is really powerful.
And I think that's where having little things, obviously in store, having salespeople who know what they're talking about is huge. Cool. But also, even in e-commerce, having a live chat function is fantastic. But even an FAQ bot, as long as you clearly make sure people know that they're not speaking to a real person, because then they get really frustrated. But even having the ability for people to ask questions, like you said, we need to go through that decision-making process to feel validated. I guess that's what it comes down to, is my purchase has to be validated. And if no one else is asking me why I want this thing, then it is so easy to walk away. And especially if it is a large amount of money, because you come home and you're like, oh, maybe I should have spent that money on bills, or maybe I should have spent that money on my kids' college education. Like, mate, there's probably a lot of other things I could have spent that money on.
Plenty.
But you probably wanted or needed the thing that you bought anyway. So why are you second guessing your own decisions?
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of where we want, if we know that an expert helped us make the right choice, then it makes us feel more confident in the decision. Because the reality is that, we're all, as human beings, like, we question ourselves. We all want to have a lot more confidence. We all want to feel more sure about things. And we all know that's not realistic a lot of times. But, someone kind of encouraging us or telling us we're making the right choice, it just makes us feel better about it. And it's one less thing that's on our mind.
I want to jump back into your 3 options. We have a little training inside of our programs called the Rule of Threes. And I don't know if there's some science behind it. I just kind of worked out in my years of serving customers that if you give people 3 choices, they're much likely, there's not a top, there's not a bottom. There's like, now I have 3 things to choose from. And it doesn't even have to be 3 different price points, but 3 just means it's not this or that. It's like, I feel like if I get 2, I don't really get a choice. I'm kind of stuck of like this or that. But when I have 3, I truly get to make my own choice. So tell me about your experience with, I'm going to call it the Rule of Threes.
Yeah. So I generally love 3. I agree. I think you're right, though. I don't know if there's any magic between 2 versus 3 versus 4. And it depends on the scenario. I've seen scenarios of 2. But anyway, in general, I love the idea of 3. But here's the thing that I feel like is important, is that if you're a salesperson or, it's really kind of, what I'm talking about. I think you can figure out a way to make this similar in an e-commerce environment, is that the buyer needs to know those are three good options. And what I say that is because I hate this setting where it's like, here's three options. This idea is awful. This idea is right. And this is another terrible idea. So it's like, I gave you three options. So and let me bring this to life. So when in kind of a B2B environment, and I think this can be true anywhere, what I would do is I'd work with the customer to understand what they needed, et cetera. I always presented three options in this business that I was part for a long time. And what I would always do is I'd say, here's option number one. And I didn't like good, better, best, because it implies like, do you want the bad one or do you want the good one? I just kind of felt like it kind of is making a customer feel bad. It's like, I want to be three. It feels like three objective options, and all of them are good choices. It's about like the things that I knew are on their mind, which is things like budget and their goals. So I'd say, here's scenario number one. Here's what you're going to get. This is how it works. Here's your goals. Here's why I think this would work. And oh, by the way, this one's actually less than the budget you shared with me. And I felt like, what a great way to build trust, because I can tell them, you don't have to spend as much money as you have. And I'm not here to just take every dime out of you. Like, I want you to make the right choice. This is a good option. It will get you what you want. It's less money. Here's option number two. It's exactly what you need. It fits within your budget. It aligns with all the things, et cetera. Here's
it's probably got a few extra things, right? Like the second one potentially has some extra things. But now we're not even there yet. And I'm like, well, I had a budget and I could get the extra things.
Right. I have the budget and I get those things like, oh, that sounds really good. And then I give them another option and say, okay, this is beyond the budget that you talked about, but it's got some things that I think would be really powerful for you based on what your goals are. I don't know if you can find any more budget, but I just thought you should be aware of it, because if you can, this would make a material impact on, your goals. So, but the key is that those are the options. And what I would do is I'd let the customer review and analyze on their own. And I knew that the best scenario is if the customer said, well, what do you think I should do? And because if they ask that question, that tells me that I've really built trust, that they see me as an expert and they want to know what I think. And I would say, well, first of all, it's your decision. Like, you have a better idea of how important these goals inside your company or what you want. I like option number three because I think it gets you everything, but like, that's a question of like your budget. And some would be like, I think option two has really worked. I think overall that one's best, all things considered, so that to me was, and I saw that work consistently. And it was another way to continue to reaffirm, like, you can trust me. I'm going to take care of you. And ultimately the choice is yours.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, we do the same thing when we do a strategy session with someone. We give them advice, but we don't tell everyone about our programs, because there's no point saying to somebody, hey, we think you should come and join our program, when we know that they're not a good fit. Maybe they're not advanced enough in business, or they don't have the cash flow to pay for it. Like, our whole goal is to get someone to walk away with some real good action steps. And there'll be a whole bunch of people who never even know. And sometimes they'll get to the end and they'll be like, so can you help me with that stuff? And we're like, well, look, I can give you some free resources, but honestly, the stuff that the programs that we've got are not for where you're at now. But I'm going to send you some things. And, when you get to that point, you can come back to us, because like you said, no one wants buyer's remorse. Nobody wants to. Sometimes the best thing you can do for somebody is to give them no choice at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of like another point. We're talking a lot about the mind of the buyer. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I think that we get in our way more than we should.
Let's dig into that.
Yeah. So I think this happens in a lot of areas of our life, but in particular, some of it actually comes from this perception we talked about at the beginning about how salespeople, the perception of sellers and the whole thing. I think it impacts, it creates this feeling of subservience, whereas a seller, we almost feel like that we're here and the buyer's there. And sometimes sellers can act like it. They act like they're beneath. They act like they're not good enough. And they kind of have feelings of, it makes them hold back. And what it does is it impedes their confidence. When a seller doesn't want that, we just talked about it. The seller wants, like, help me figure out what to do. Like, I want you to tell me what to do because you're the expert in that.
Yeah.
So
The buyer wants you to help them make a decision.
yeah, they want that from you. So there's a fabulous book I read recently called "You Have More Influence Than You Think," and the summary of the whole thing is that people are twice as likely to say yes to our requests than we give ourselves credit for.
Wow.
So think about that. Like, if you could get twice the amount of things that you want if you were simply willing to ask. So and really that comes down to, like, we're human beings. We have all these things in our head that we, oh, they're not going to want that. Oh, I don't want to come off as too pushy. I don't want to ask for the order because, like, they'll think I'm just being like the typical salesperson. I don't want to ask that because then what are they going to think of me? And it affects, like, how we act, how we carry ourselves, the questions we ask, the voice inflection we use, the way we dress, like all these little things that get in our way. And ultimately what's happening, it gets in the customer's way because they'll look at you as someone who's lacking in confidence, doesn't look like an expert, doesn't carry themselves as an expert. And then it gets in the way of the customer's ability to make a decision.
We just had one of our strategy coaches on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she laughs that I always talk about her because she is one of our ex-retailers who went through our program, and I headhunted her when she sold her business to come and work for us. And she says, you always talk about me, and I'm finally on the podcast. I can defend myself. And the reason I talk about her, and it's not just her, now that she has worked as a strategy coach, she realizes that so many people do this, but giving discounts to people who don't ask for them. And she said, because we sold expensive food products, and I would be thinking, oh my God, that person bought $70 worth of macadamias. They probably didn't want $70 worth of macadamias. And it's like, well, they didn't want $70 worth of macadamias. They wouldn't have bought $70 worth. And so she would, like, give them a discount, or she would throw something else in. And I've kind of surmised that this is more of a female thing than a male thing, but I could be wrong. But she would just be like, I thought that I would never pay that amount of money for that thing. So why would somebody else? So putting our own money biases. She almost felt
guilty about it.
She felt guilty that someone was spending $70 on macadamia nuts. And I was like, and the conversation that we all, and I still remember to this day having the conversation, which was something along the lines of, so who died and made you the customer experience god? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, maybe that person has been saving up for weeks to buy these macadamia nuts. Yeah. And then by you discounting them, they're going to walk out the door going, was there something wrong with these macadamia nuts? Like, they were 70. Why did I only pay 60? Hold on. Like, and all of a sudden the doubt has crept in. So giving someone a discount actually can do the opposite. Instead of them walking away feeling great, they're walking away thinking, hold up, was this, are they nearly expired, or what's going on here?
Yeah, that's a great, I love what you said, because it's about it. Actually, we kind of have our own issues, and they have an effect on the customer. So, what a shame. So getting over our own selves sometimes, and like having the confidence to speak up and tell someone what they need, and the whole thing is really powerful. And the research around it, some of it in the book, is amazing. Like the examples of people's unwillingness to speak up, even in moments of crisis, is like almost scary. So you think about, if I'm not willing to speak up when the building might be on fire, how do you think you're going to act if you're feeling a little bit less than the customer, or you feel a little bit guilty, you're feeling a little bit like, oh, I need to make this sale so I can pay the bills. Like, it adds up, and suddenly you're doing yourself.
Customers can smell desperation, can't they? I don't know what it is, but I know that those days when it was like it had been raining for a week straight, and I had a baby store and no one had come in because no one was taking their baby out. And you'd be like, oh, hi, can I help you? What can I do? And this,
oh my gosh,
go away.
Right. Which doesn't mean that you can't feel desperate. Like, we've been in situations where we feel desperate.
Yes.
But the minute you let it come across, you realize, like, you're getting in your way, you're getting in the customer's way. It's something to fight through.
It's funny, you were just saying about how some salespeople can feel subservient or feel less than. And the first thing that popped into my head was all of those reality TV shows where, and I haven't watched them, so forgive me if I'm not getting this right, but you have the people selling the luxury real estate, and they're always dressed in their, Chanel and all the brand names. But I can see now when you said that, I hadn't really put two and two together, but it's that feeling of I'm on the same level as you. Like I can trust you. If I'm not wearing the same brands as you, then you may not consider me an expert because you've got specific taste. And it would be the same if you're talking outdoor, sports or,
Whatever.
ballet or something like that. Like you want somebody to feel like they're on the same level as you. And I kind of never really put two and two together until you said that. And that was the thing that popped into my head was we kind of, we chuckle at the overly made up and all the labels and, the Manalo Blahniks shoes and all that kind of stuff. But actually, it's all part of giving customers that stability and giving them that sense of you get me, you understand what I'm looking for.
Right. No doubt. And hey, you know what? We've got to feel good about ourselves. And we've all heard the phrase like dress for success. You dress good, you feel good. There's something to it. We have to be ourselves. Like we can't, suddenly dress up like something that we're not. It's got to be natural and real. But it matters. I'll tell you a funny story, and that's part of how I learned this. So early in my career, I remember I was starting to have a little bit of success. I was at a trade show. My boss was standing next to me. He loves telling the story too. And he looks over at me and he goes, "How are your commission checks lately?" And I said, "Well, actually, they're pretty good." He goes, and then he gave me a little look up and down. He goes, "Go buy a new wardrobe." I know he loved kind of putting zingers. And so his point was, and which was funny, that was hilarious. And my wife loved it because we went shopping and got stuff. But his point was, he's like, if you walk in to the room to go meet with a senior level person at a company, like, how do they perceive you? You want them to perceive you as someone who is comfortable and is regular. You can be in that room. Like, what does the kind of person that's in that executive boardroom, that's in that meeting room, that's meeting with like the top executives or whatever it is, all these other their peers and the whole thing, what do you think that person looks like? And so his point was exactly what you're saying. Look the part.
Yeah.
And, you can't not be something that you are, but if you don't look the part, it gets in the customer's way and they start wondering, like, is this person really an expert? I mean, look at them.
Yeah. It's the same as wearing the $3,000 suit in the golf pro shop. I'd be like, what do you know about golf? Like this.
Right. That wouldn't make any sense. Right.
No, you might, walk around the course and play, but I don't think you really know what you're talking about.
Right. Exactly.
All right. If there is one thing that you could change when it came to giving customers the ability to make choices and giving them back the power, what would it be?
If there was one thing I could change, I think that it would be that, so there's a lot of salespeople out there that try to overcome these issues by just being more aggressive. And I think that that's a shame for them and it's a shame for customers. So I was looking at something the other day. 87, this is in the executive place, but I think it's true of any customer. 87% of executives say they find their conversations with salespeople unhelpful. Think about that, 87%.
I feel like that is exactly the same when you go to an electronics shop.
I think, and that was my point, is that stat, while it's in the B2B space, I bet that's true across all industries. And so when you think about that, what's happening is salespeople try to overcome it by just being more aggressive, sending more emails, making more phone calls, and that's not the answer. And I think that if we could, realize that that's something that we as sellers can change. I hear the stat like that and I think, what a shame from what I talked about earlier.
Same. How many people are doing it wrong?
Right. And the second thing I think of is what a great opportunity, because it's not that hard to stand out.
Yeah. You don't have to be the 13%.
The 13%, I can be a 13%. Like, it's not that hard. So you just have to genuinely care about people, be an expert, help them make decisions and make them swiftly and feel confident about them. It's just
and don't be afraid to take their money. To me, that's the biggest thing is it's okay to take somebody's money. You can do all those things, but if you walk away from the sale, are you actually giving the customer a choice? Because you're kind of not. You're actually taking all of their choice and their power away from them.
And on the other side of that, it's okay if the customer doesn't buy something.
Yeah.
If they don't need it, then do you have the confidence and do you have the wherewithal and the expertise to tell someone they don't need it? Because like you're saying, if somebody, maybe sometimes if a customer is just not a fit and them spending money on, I used to think about going back to my golf store analogy. I'd be like, man, I'm sorry, but you're not a very good golfer. I wouldn't say it like that, but do not spend $1,000 on a golf club that's going to make no impact on your game. Don't waste your money. And so being willing to say something like that and talk someone into spending less, or talk someone into maybe this isn't right for you, that takes some confidence. But the thing is, if you genuinely care about getting your customer the right thing, you would do that in a second.
Of course. Yeah. And the thing is, that person will generally either bring you business from telling everybody else, or they'll work up to that next level that they wanted in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think how would you act if your brother or your brother-in-law walked in there? Now, what would you tell them? Oh yeah, you need that $1,000 of course you do. Be like, hey man, don't waste your money.
Don't do it.
You need some lessons.
Yeah. Why don't you just get the $100 golf club and then spend the rest on lessons.
Yes.
Yep. Bob Marsh, love the conversation. Love everything you had to share with us. If people would love to follow you or reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. I've loved the conversation as well. Thank you. So you can find on my website, which is meetbobmarsh.com. So I talk about topics like this and many more through keynote speeches. Companies hire me to come in and talk to their sales organizations. So you can learn more there. And then also I can easily be found on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Bob Marsh.
Cool. Thank you so much, Bob. I'm hoping that after listening to this, going into the holiday season, our people are happy to sell and happy to give their customers choices. So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelena and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.